So you've got a couple things coming up. So we'll do a little housekeeping before we dive right in. The first thing for everybody watching this channel, and it's a little finite thing. She might do it again, but on Sunday, this Sunday, so tomorrow, she is going to be doing an election healing using astrology and herbs and talking through ways that we can heal ourselves and kind of deal with transition and anger. And I wrote down a couple other descriptors that she had, which were kind of cool. But the bottom line is it's a post-election healing for anybody feeling a little rocked right now. So I'll put a link to that below. So make sure you sign up if you're interested. And then also, this is kind of a taste of a workshop she's going to be doing about the Mars retrograde. So if what you're hearing here really has you intrigued and you want to dive in more, if Mars is a really important planet in your chart, then it's a really good opportunity for you to take her workshop next weekend about the Mars retrograde. But in the meantime, let's set the stage and let's talk a little bit about why this is even important, because Mars is a little bit of a faster moving planet, and it's been kind of going in and out of, it's been in Cancer and now it's in Leo. So talk a little bit about what's going on, Fern.
Okay, sure. So I just want to kind of set the stage for the retrogrades in general. And we all know that Mercury goes retrograde about 4 times a year, and Venus goes retrograde once every 18 months. Mars is probably the personal planet anyway, that goes retrograde. It's the most rare retrograde of the personal planet. So it goes retrograde every 2.5 years. And the last time it was retrograde in the sign of Leo was about, let's see, I think we're looking back. Well, we're going to get into that a little bit more as we talk further, but it was probably about 15 years ago, somewhere around 2007, 2008, I believe. So this Mars retrograde in Leo hasn't happened for a while. So I think it's really important to spend a little time talking about what it might mean for us collectively and individually.
Awesome. Awesome. Do you want to talk a little bit about what Mars so it's been in Cancer. So you were kind of going through the fact that like a retrograde is when a planet kind of moves backwards, and it may not actually physically move backwards, but it appears to move backwards, and it goes in and out of different signs. And so it's been in the sign of Cancer. So themes around finding courage and women and I think is the water sign is Cancer, but now we're in a fire sign of Leo. So you want to talk a little bit about the difference there?
Sure. Now that's a really good point, because Mars in Cancer has really had us, I think, collectively in a place of defending the clan, of really feeling very kind of territorial about our history, about our, who we are as a country. It's a very sort of nationalistic placement, Mars in Cancer. And it's kind of an emotional, instinctive, protective energy. It's not necessarily rational or logical. Cancer is a water sign, so it's really going to be this more, I feel it in my gut, not so much I'm analyzing this and thinking about this and being cool-headed and logical. So as you pointed out, Mars is shifting elements from water to fire. And, Mars is a fire planet, so it's going to be much more at home in a fire sign. And what a fire sign it is. So, we all know Leo somehow, and Leo is the sign that is ruled by the sun. So it's a very dynamic, heart-centered, shiny, generous, fun, creative. I mean, I love Leo energy. I have Leo on the cusp of my 11th house. I have lots of Leo influenced friends. You're one of them. And
Yeah, my Mars is in Leo, so I'm gonna,
exactly. So this
yeah.
is This is gonna be really interesting for you. We'll be taking notes. What's going
Right.
on with Dabney? Um, but yeah, so Mars has moved into Leo. It's been in Leo for I think it's a couple of weeks now, right? It moved
You know,
into
it
Leo.
went, it really was, I believe it was like the day of the election. I think it was November 5th.
Right. I'm just
I
looking
think
it
it
up.
was
Yeah.
the
Okay, that's
actual, it was
right.
either the day
So
before or the day of.
wow, yeah, really recently. Okay, that is right. It was November 5th, the day of the election. Wow. Okay, so we're settling into the first decan of Leo, basically. And so we're having that first kind of experience. And there definitely is a sense of high drama. I mean, just looking at the political scene, I mean, what could be weirder or like more kind of in your face than what's happening right now, right? Um, so when Mars goes retrograde in Leo, all of that energy is going to start to be pulled back. It's gonna go be back down in, and there's a reversal that happens. There's revisiting of the past. So let me just see what you've
Yeah,
got.
no, that's very interesting. And I mean, I really appreciate your perspective on the Mars and Cancer because that's when like a lot of people were making their decisions and voting. And like you said, it was kind of more of a gut feeling like this is like, the economy might be doing great, but I don't feel like it is. And I feel like, it's kind of really just like, this is what I want. It's like really going with that. I want to be protected. I want to be insular. There's sort of Cancer energy, it really does have this shell. And to your point, it can be very nationalistic, very traditional. It can actually be quite conservative. So it was interesting to see that, like, while people were deciding, and then on election day, it goes into Leo, and it's like, the circus is in town, right? Like there is a lot going on, and like, and so it'll be interesting to see as it backs up and people are reviewing the decisions they've made. And there's just this larger than life energy right now of like, all the change that is potential that can happen, but like really kind of taking a step back when Mars goes into retrograde and reviewing the decisions. And you do hear these things, and I don't think it's like unmasked yet, but I do think that there are people, like one of the top Google searches was like, the day after the election is like, how does a tariff work? And it's like, you know, really like these like spikes of like people kind of researching and like, like kind of finding out about some of the things they voted for after the fact. And so this will be an interesting time to see how they integrate that information.
Yeah, exactly. So let's look at some dates, and maybe talk about the shadow side of Mars and Leo, because just like what you're saying there, with that kind of reflecting on what happened, basically, yeah, so some of the shadow of Mars in Leo, which we're going to be starting to experience as the retrograde goes full on. So December 6th is when Mars officially goes retrograde. We're in the Mars retrograde shadow right now. So there has been like a sensation of it, but it actually goes retrograde on the 6th and it stays retrograde until February 24th. So, so just thinking about what you said about that, kind of reflecting on, oh my God, what did I do kind of thing. Um, there is this sense of Leo as being in its ego. And, as Stephen always says, having an ego is not a bad thing. You'd be insane without an ego. So we all need to have some kind of an ego, a healthy ego. But Mars retrograde in Leo, there may be some reflection or lessons that come about how we are using or acting on or expressing all those Mars words, our ego in the world. We may need to take a step back with our egos during this time. Yeah.
That's amazing. And so, yeah, not just in the collective, but personally, right? Like that is an opportunity for us to see like how are we putting ourselves out into the world? Like what's our energy that we're projecting, especially with Leo? Like we're projecting, are we projecting a sense of like we know better than you or like anger or, or like, oh, haha, we won. Like, just look like we're inner reflection of like, am I in a place of assuming that I know how things will play out versus like question, like Mars is just so powerful. It wants to move forward. It's always like it's always right, right? Like there's no like Mars doesn't say like, well, I could be wrong. Like that's not Mars energy. And so that when Mars goes retrograde, this is a great opportunity to kind of then take a step back and be like, maybe a little bit more open to the fact that we are leading with our egos or we are leading with assumptions that may not be real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and something you said, I think too, really speaks to this Mars retrograde. And this is with Mars and Leo, there's a lot of creative energy. Leo is a creative sign. It's the sign of the artist. And we've talked about this in our other podcast we did a few months ago. But I think that this Mars retrograde is going to be an opportunity to question how we're using our creative energy and maybe to do some revisions on that.
I love that. And I imagine that in your workshop that you're going to teach that's, something that you can help people identify where Mars is in their chart. So, we can then like where is Mars in your chart? And so where can you put your energy in a creative way? How can you express yourself in a healthy way that isn't kind of giving into that ego or shadow? Or once it goes back into Cancer, there's also then this like fear or protect like overprotectiveness.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely are going to be looking at in the workshop, identifying where not only where Mars is retrograding by house and any aspects it's making to other planets, but it's also important, I think, when a planet goes retrograde to look at where it is in your natal chart, because I really have experienced and witnessed in clients that, especially Mars, because it's retrograde longer and it's more rare, that wherever Mars is in your natal chart is activated as well during this time. So you're looking at two areas of the chart at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Cool. Did you want to show part of your slides or what?
Yeah, so I'll give a little preview here. And we were also going to talk about, I believe, the Mars Pluto opposition. But let me just pull up the slide for that and then we can get into that a little more. So, okay, so we looked at the dates with Mars retrograde in Leo. This is the timeline. The last time Mars was retrograde in Leo was actually December 9th through the 10th, 2009 to 2010. So that was about 14, 15 years ago. And I just want to highlight that at that time, it was retrograde a little bit later than it is this time. So it retrograded at 19 degrees of Leo back to 0 degrees of Leo, whereas this time it's also retrograding back into Cancer as well. So I included that information for when Mars was retrograde in Cancer, which was 2007 to 2008.
Okay.
Okay, so it's going to be covering slightly different territory of the sign of Leo, and including Cancer, as you pointed out. Okay,
So
so
even
let's.
in your own life, you can kind of think back to like what was happening in my life during that time. I think collectively that was, it was really the end of the Bush administration. It was the beginning of Obama's term. Actually, Obama had been in office then almost a year. It sounds like, or he was in for a year. So it was kind of that first year of kind of looking at what the policies he promised versus what he delivered, things like that. So,
Absolutely. So yeah, I think politically, collectively, and individually it can be helpful to go back to that time period, which is like roughly 2007 to 2009. Okay, so this is a wonderful chart that the group Honeycomb um, created for the Mars retrograde opposite Pluto. And if you look at some of this information, it's really interesting because it shows that in October 4th, Mars entered the pre-retrograde shadow. And then we saw the first Mars-Pluto opposition, November 3rd, right in between Cancer and Capricorn, Pluto and Capricorn, Mars in Cancer at 29 degrees, which is such a amplified, important degree, the last degree of any sign. And here we've got it in that Cancer-Capricorn spectrum. And then we've got, and Mars moved into Leo on the day of the election, as we spoke about. Then we've got Mars going in retrograde. And so take a look at this date period right here. This is a really important date that a lot of astrologers are looking at. So basically, this is not only around the time of the inauguration, but this reflects back to the kind of Capitol revolt we had when Biden was in office, and there's some similar astrological dynamics. But what we're looking at here is the first opposition between Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius on the 3rd of January, and then a few days later, Mars going back into Cancer. So maybe we should talk a little bit about that Mars in Leo, Pluto, Aquarius opposition.
yeah, Mars and Leo, Pluto and Aquarius. So that's so interesting. Such different energy than, I mean, I'm like everybody knows because I have all this cancer. I am like so ready for Pluto to go into Aquarius. Like I'm so ready. So, but wow, it's going to be a very different kind of energy. It's not so much about that kind of like wounding from an unconscious childhood place. Now we're like in the realm of the people, and you're kind of brought up a great point. Why don't you espouse a little bit about the masses versus the elite and things like that?
Yeah, so I think you probably talked about this on some of your other shows, just the transition of Pluto into Aquarius. And the last time that happened, historically speaking, there were a number of revolts. We had the American Revolution, we had the Haitian Revolution, we had the French Revolution. During that time span, there were several major revolutions. And so Aquarius is the sign of the people. It's the sign of the populace. It's the sign of the group, kind of group mind, but also mob mentality. And it is a sign of revolution. And then we have Pluto, which is one of the planets of revolution, and the sign of revolution. So there's no doubt that we are going to experience some very revolutionary times. What's super interesting about this time period in early January is that we have Mars showing up in Leo to form this opposition to Pluto. And Leo is the king or the queen. It's the royalty, it's the elite. And we don't have a royal family in America, but we look at our political elite. And so we've got the people facing off against the elite and some very powerful, active planets showing up in that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because like it's kind of the ruling class and that sort of like you said, the elite. It's not kind of the people who, it's not that Capricorn structure of government, but it's more like the people that have money and like who are, kind of controlling things from a position of, leadership and power by that status is definitely so that's a different kind of energy. And it's really interesting too because Neptune is still in Pisces, and there's this really interesting confusion and melding of what I've been seeing, and so again, I'm sorry, I'm getting really political here, but you know, really reviewing a lot of the things that people voted for, the what they're told they're voting for. And there's a lot of common ground on what people actually want, right? So people actually want a change in our healthcare. People actually want a change in our medical system. People actually want a change in, term limits. And, like, so there's all these common ground that we're hearing from the more revolutionary candidate who is the president-elect. But what's interesting is like the actual, like what's being told to people versus the actuality of like the richest man in the world kind of controlling things behind the scenes. And like, so that there's one reality and another reality, that how is that going to play out? And that's what that looks like to me, is like what people wanted is what they were hearing as could happen, versus they want lower taxes, they want better schools, like they want these things, but that what's really going to happen when this kind of status conscious ruling elite is the one still making the decisions? Or is there a complete new order of things that happens in a crumbling? And that's what still remains to be seen, and that's where it's very foggy with that Neptune in Pisces in my mind.
Absolutely. I mean, I think things will get clearer when Neptune moves into Aries, but there's a couple of things that came up while you were talking that you kind of triggered. One is that Mercury is also going to be retrograde for the next, it goes retrograde, I think, right before Thanksgiving, and it's retrograde through the end of the year, pretty much mid-December. And so I think just that having Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, having different thoughts, ideas, belief systems, reviewing those is really key. But going back to the Mars-Pluto opposition, Mars in Leo, Pluto in Aquarius, we also can see a standoff between technology, big tech plutocrats in this case, Pluto in Aquarius, and artists. So I think that artists, in a sense, and creativity is kind of our the sort of cure for the ailment, in this sense, that I think artists are going to really be doing some reflection on what kind of art to bring to the table to challenge some of this, like, well, let's just make it all technical and abstract and in our heads. And artists are going to be bringing it back to the heart, which is Leo's power play of like, no, we have hearts, we're human beings, let's look at that kind of thing.
I love that. Yeah, the individual can't be removed from society completely. And that is also a shadow of Pluto and Aquarius, is like this technology where there's so much potential with AI, but there's also a lot of, fear, because there is, people are losing jobs. That's a reality. And there are things that happen with when we replace the human side of things. And so I love that you call that out. And so individually, and we're talking a lot collectively, but in our own lives, I guess that is that opportunity for us with this review time with Mars and Leo, is to kind of find our own creative self-expression and don't lose our own individuality in the midst of the external chaos of revolution.
Absolutely. And I think Mars and Leo is such a passionate combination. And so this is, when you touch base with that passion, that you have inside, that fuels, that fuels so many amazing, projects, expressions, children, that creates amazing things in the world. And so I think this is an opportunity to really kind of clarify and reconnect with our true passion, with the fire inside of us that really brings life. And so I'm hoping that that's kind of some of the ways that people will use this time period.
Awesome. Awesome.
All right. Do you want to look at a little bit of herbal support?
Yeah. Well, do you want to show what the second date of the Pluto Aquarius opposition is really quickly. And then, yes, I think that that would be really
Sure.
helpful for people.
Sure, let me just get to that. Okay, here we go. So here's this great graph, and yeah, good call on that. So what we're looking at then, so Mars is back in Cancer from January 6th to February, well, actually no, to April 17th. So Mars has got a nice long chunk in Cancer. I love how they color coded this with the blue, reflecting that Mars in Cancer period. That helps make it a little bit more um, easy for graphic people. And then we've got it entering the red again, Mars back in Fire, back in Leo, April 17th. And then it makes that second opposition also between Mars in Leo and Pluto in Aquarius, April 27th. And then a few days later, it exits the post-retrograde shadow.
Yeah, so really kind of from a collective standpoint, what stands out to me is how interesting that January timeframe is, that it's really that Mars isn't going to be in both Leo and Cancer when it's opposing the Pluto and Aquarius. So that's energy that we've never lived through in our lifetime, and we're going to have both of those. And then, so that's kind of the like there's a little bit of that, push pull, different energies, and then it's pretty squarely back into Leo in May when it's opposing the Pluto for the last time, right? Am I reading that right?
It's opposing the Pluto for the last time,
Okay,
April
April.
27th. Yeah, it exits the post-retrograde shadow May 2nd. So that time period from April 17th to May 2nd is really dynamic also.
Yeah, and what that sort of tells me too is that by April we have like a much clearer sense. Like I do believe that there's going to be tremendous change in the first, like a lot happening in those first couple months of this new administration. And so it's almost like then it starts to become like more like we feel the consequences, we start to understand what we're in for, kind of thing. So
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely. I
Okay.
think the final piece of the Mars retrograde and going direct and opposing Pluto and then moving out of the shadow is going to be like the resolution to some story, the beginning of our story in Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
mark your calendars. Okay, so yeah, I would love to, because Fern has she's got so much knowledge about herbs. This is really her specialty. She does a lot of really cool stuff blending astrology and herbal medicine and naturopathic kind of healing things with, like, she's the one who turned me on to my flower essences and things like that. So she is available for readings too, so I'll put her information below, but she's got some really cool kind of more natural remedies that she always turns to and helps me turn to when I'm kind of stressed out. So what are we thinking makes sense for Mars retrograde?
Yeah, so thanks, Dabney, for that. I'm just gonna put it this. Oh, here we go. Okay, so in the workshop, I'm gonna talk about several herbs and flower essences that are good for this time of Mars retrograde. But I want to just focus on, for our time today, nettles. And nettles is an herb of Mars, and there's a famous astrologer, herbalist, doctor from oh gosh, about 300 years ago, Nicholas Culpeper, and he was one of the first in recorded history anyway. I'm sure pre-recorded there's more information, but who associated the plant nettles with Mars. And we can see that in a number of different ways, even visually. Nettles has these thorns around it, and if you happen to stick yourself with them, you really feel it. And that effect was actually used medicinally. I've used it in my own life for if you throw your back out, or you have a really painful muscular skeletal issue, pricking yourself with nettles can really feel good actually. Once you get past the initial prick, there's a chemical reaction that happens that really eases inflammation. So Mars is a blood cleanser. It helps to clear heat out of the body. It calms inflammation. And always with herbs, we can use these both physically, but also emotionally and spiritually. So I think this can be a wonderful time to drink nettle tea, especially as it gets towards springtime. Nettles is a plant that emerges in the spring, just like Mars and Aries. That's Aries season, and it helps to kind of clear out the cobwebs of winter. So it's known to be a sort of a spring associated plant. It can emotionally clear anger, but it can also, if you're having trouble with your Mars function, if you're, feeling not like you don't have a lot of energy, or you don't know where your anger is, nettles can be really helpful to kind of get your Mars up, get your Mars going. So that's one plant that I absolutely recommend for people to explore. And just my disclaimer, this is always consult with your medical practitioner. Nettles is a very safe plant, but if you have any concerns or questions about any pharmaceuticals you're taking, make sure to talk to your doctor before using these.
Yeah.
Um,
So would you recommend, like, if you're having a big Mars transit, even outside of this Mars retrograde, would you recommend to a client, to drink nettle tea, or I don't know if it comes in like a tincture form.
Yeah, absolutely. It comes that you can do tea. I really love the flavor of nettles, so I like it in tea form, and it's kind of just nice to have that hot water experience. But you can also do cold nettle tea. That's a really nice one. Nettles does better when it's steeped for a really long time, like even overnight. Um, you can, just get a quart jar and put some nettles in, and then put it in your refrigerator overnight, put some boiling water, and drink it in the morning. But also it comes in tincture form. You can even do like a steam with nettles if you don't want to take it internally, or yeah, use it if you have sore muscles. You can, if you find a fresh nettle plant, which is a little hard in the winter time, but you can use that for those sore muscles.
Okay. Well, I've got Uranus squaring my Mars right now. So it sounds like I could use some nettle. And it looks like I'm gonna have a Mars return too. So I guess I need some nettle tea.
Yeah, no, I'd be curious to see how that works out for you if you try it, because I love nettles. The other remedy that I'm going to recommend too is more of an energetic one, and this is a flower essence called Impatience. And it's basically just what it sounds like. And Impatience is a very common flower. Many of us have it, in our yard. That's a pretty little different, comes in different colors flower, but the flower essence is for impatience. It helps to calm you down, slow things down, and just kind of put you into a rhythm that is a little more accepting and receptive, and not trying to rush, rush, rush. And that, always during Mars retrogrades, we're going to be, pretty much everybody is going to be feeling some impatience. So this is a good one to help kind of calm that down.
Do we feel impatient because we're feeling somewhat blocked in our ability to move forward, or is it like what makes you say that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it does depend on your natal chart. I have an out of bounds Mars, so impatience is one of those qualities that's a lifelong lesson and struggle for me. But I think with the collectively with the Mars retrograde, energy is moving at a different pace than we're used to. And generally speaking, when things are retrograde, it's a slower pace, because the objective is to get us to look at reality in a different way, in a way that is, we need to be moving slower in order to see those things that we're supposed to see. And so we're shifting gears, and it's like you're going from, when they have those old, gear shifting cars, which I know how to drive. I love driving those, but you literally have to, go down to a lower gear when you slow down. And so that process of shifting to the lower gear can be difficult. You know, we want to just keep going fast and oh no, you got to slow down.
That's a
So
great that's a great metaphor for this time that I think people can hang on to, that like that's what's really happening. We may not be moving forward, like things may be accelerating, but like we're also reviewing. So it's kind of this weird internal energy of, where are we going? Oh, we're going over there, but how are we getting there? I've got to figure that out. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. But hopefully, you know, with it retrograding in Leo, we can find new ways to have fun, new ways to celebrate, new ways to create, new ways to express ourselves and experience our egos in a way that feels more authentic, more connected to our passion, you know, more connected to our true creativity. So that's my hope for myself and for all of us during this time period.
Yeah, with a Mars in Leo, as a native with Mars in Leo, one of the things that it took me a long time to come to this, but it is actually quite a courageous Leo. Like it really, like Mars in Cancer is a little bit the cowardly lion, but or like it's a little more cowardly. This like there's courage in Leo, like because there it is, that fire, and but the courage is like you said, creative courage of self-expression, and you can kind of feel good about yourself. You can find things that you love about yourself, like healthy Leo like loves itself, like it's feeling itself. And so there may be something where we step into a new level of confidence as well, even when it's retrograde, because we can kind of figure out during this time, where do we shine personally? And
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, I'm really glad you brought that up because I think that courage is a key part of Mars in Leo. And actually I know that the root of the word courage is related to the French word or the Latin word for heart. So the word courage, I'm just reading off Wikipedia right now, comes from the old French word courage, which means heart, innermost feelings, or temper. So when we kind of circle back around and look at Leo ruling the heart, and we find that courage comes from the heart, it comes from that passion and that, you know, that humanity. And so I do think that we're going to have to be kind of going backwards to find our true courage. And nettles is also a plant that it has a warrior aspect to it, and it helps us to protect us while we find that courage, helps us to fight for what we're passionate about. So I'm loving all these overlays here.
yeah, no, that's what's so fun about having different astrologers on my channel that I get to talk to and kind of bounce ideas off of and hear what you have to say. Would you be interested, Fern? I'm going to put you on the spot, but I could really see that, and I would love to hear from the community if this is something you'd be interested in, like coming on for a live to have people kind of talk about certain things that are going on in their lives astrologically or ailments, and you can, kind of give some off the cuff advice on herbs and flower essences and things like that, because you're so good at that. Like you've just got like a dictionary of information. So if people are interested in that, would you be interested in coming on and doing that?
I would. That sounds awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So if you're
Yeah.
interested in that, comment below and kind of, let us know that that would be something that you would be down for, because I'm she's one of my top people that I go to when I'm like, oh, my hip hurts, and she sent me like this awesome like package of stuff. So
Uh,
okay, well, anything else that you want to mention or say before we wrap up?
I think we're good. I think we covered a lot of it. I mean, I think I do want to just say about the free offering that I'm doing, just because we're talking about feelings and Leo self-expression. I just want to say this is not going to be, this offering is not going to be, oh, get over it. You know, you're in deep grief, you're in rage about this, move through it. That's not what I'm going for with us. This is I'm hoping to create a really safe space for people to be wherever they're at their emotion and give you some tools for healing that you can use whenever you're ready. And if you're ready in that moment, that's great. But if you're not ready to move from that feeling yet, because I feel like there's just collectively a little bit of like, okay, move on, move on. And some people are easier about doing that than others. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do need to have that time and reflection. So thank you, Fern. And thank you for offering that. And also just anybody that, would like a reading from Fern, I get readings from Fern. She is an astrologer that I turn to, and she's also a master level trained astrologer by Stephen Forrest, and she teaches at his school. So, she's awesome to get a reading from. So I highly, highly recommend that, especially if I don't have any openings, which I don't through the end of the year. She may. So like I said, in the description, I will have all sorts of information for you. And I hope you check out Fern's work because she's a great astrologer. So thank you for coming on. And I hope this was helpful for people to kind of understand when people are talking about Mars retrograde, what are they talking about and how it can impact us. So, yes, as always, there's a reason and a season for it all. This is the Mars retrograde season starting December 6th. And the universe is conspiring to help us. So thank you for joining us. And thank you, Fern, for coming on.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.